say you?
I would say if I said no, we could just we could just close this conversation right now.
We can save everybody's time.
And we can move on to the cocktail hour.
Hello and welcome to episode 244 of the Rockstar CMO Effing Marketing Podcast. It's Saturday the 16th of November. I hope you've had a good week and you're well and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. I'm your host, Ian Truscott. I'm not a rockstar, but I am a CMO, and on this podcast, with the help of my chums, we share the marketing street knowledge that will bring out the rockstar marketer in you. Come say hello. You can find us at rockstarcmo.com or rockstarcmo on LinkedIn. We have another shorter show this week as Robert is travelling, so no virtual bar time for us, but we do have Jeff Clark in the marketing studio as we discuss 4 perspectives in respecting privacy while offering relevant, personalised content. But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back.
We'll be right back. My dad works in B2B marketing, but I never really knew what that meant. Then one day, my dad came by my school for career day and told everyone in my class he was a big ROAS man. Then he just kept saying things like, the bigger the ROAS, the better, over and over. My friends still laugh at me to this day. I think it means calculating a return on ad spend. One thing's for sure, I'll be known as the ROAS man's kid for the rest of my days. Why couldn't you just be a fireman or a lawyer? Why? You ruined my life, Dad.
Not everyone gets B2B, but LinkedIn has the people who do. And with ads on LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people based on job title, industry, likelihood to buy, and more. Start converting your B2B audience into high-quality leads today. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be. To be.
His code name's Jackal. He's an exceptional assassin.
Streaming now on Peacock.
He will kill again, unless we stop him.
Academy Award winner Eddie Redmayne.
You're paying me to kill him. I am charging you for getting away.
The Jackal's here. Look at the exits.
BAFTA Award winner Lashana Lynch.
I will find him, and I will kill him myself.
I like to win.
So do I.
The Day of the Jackal. Streaming now, only on Peacock.
Right, let's join Jeff Clark, our resident marketing strategist and former Forrester research director, in the marketing studio.
Welcome, Ian, to the Rockstar CMO studio.
Thank you very much, mate. How are you doing?
I am doing. I'm doing okay. I'm doing
Jolly
okay.
good. Jolly good.
You know.
If I ask you about the weather, then I'll have to admit that we're recording this a week or so before this goes out. So we've got to hope there isn't any extreme weather that happens between now and then. So
absolutely. Well, you know, we have. I'll make a broad generalization that is still existing. We had a wicked warm fall or autumn, as that you might say, here in Western Massachusetts, and today is no exception. And every time we say this is going to be the last day, of like somewhat summerly weather, another one pops up.
Yeah. Oh, nice. We're I think I can't remember whether when the last time we chatted it was the same, but we're having the no weather that we have here in the UK, where it's just grey. It's not cold. It's not hot. It's not raining. It's not snowing. It's just grey. There is no weather happening at all.
Awesome.
Anyway, let's get on to the topic of the week, because last week we were talking about being data driven, and I think one of the rabbit holes we probably skipped over, because we're regularly skipping over rabbit holes, that seems to be our job here, was about talking about personalization, which is one of the big use cases of having all this data, isn't it, to improve our customer experience and personalize our offer. But it requires a bit of a balance between respecting our privacy while offering relevant, tailored, and convenient experiences. So this week we're doing something slightly differently, aren't we? For a start, there isn't 5 everything, there's only 4. but we're going to come up with, we've had a little look about 4 different perspectives on this topic. So we're going to take 2 each, see how we get on. Now, where the topic of this is relevance and personalization, which is more often associated B2C, but we're primarily focused on B2B. Jeff, is it still relevant for us to have this conversation before we dig in? What say you?
I would say if I said no, we could just we could just close this conversation right now.
Save everybody's time.
We could move on to the cocktail hour. But of course it is. And I think for a couple of reasons. I mean, one is that business to consumer tactics tend to set the expectations we have. And I mean, we've been talking about this for years. Amazon and other companies have been like, they provide very personalized services. And so it's like, that's kind of what I'm expecting when I'm dealing particularly online. But obviously in B2B, we've got that additional challenge of balancing online and in-person interactions. And then the other thing is, we're typically selling to buying teams, not individuals. So it changes some of the dynamics of personalization, but it's imperative that we get signals from people who are engaging with us, we can try to put them into, certainly an organization, or can we put people into buying roles in a buying team somewhere, and we, as we always talk about, our role as marketers is to educate the buyer, not just throw them in a funnel. So providing that relevant information to help them on their buying process, their journey, that's what we're supposed to do.
Splendid. So relevance and personalization is important to us in B2B. And as I said, we've got 4 perspectives. I'm going first. Shall I just dive straight in, Jeff? What do you think?
Dive in.
Number 1. All right. So number 1, I thought I'd look at the consumer's perspective. So what I was looking at in this balance between respect and relevance, I did some research. Well, I had a look to see if there was research that supported how consumers actually feel about this, right? So I'd read some anecdotal stuff about, that people want to trade, that people are happy to trade some data for a better service, right? So, I mean, personally, I like personalization because if I'm watching sport, I prefer to see ads for cars and ads for ladies' sanitary products. Why did I put that in the show?
I don't know. Why did you put that in? I have no problem with watching those ads, but anyway.
Yeah, but you want to, I don't know how I was putting this, but it's almost part, when you're watching, because nowadays, most of the ads we watch is during things like live sport or live news or live events, right? So you're going to see ads. Ads are a necessary part of our lives. We might as well see ones that we're interested in, right? So I think I've dodged that one. So I think I'm like a lot of people. I'm happy to trade convenience and relevance for data. But the thing is, we know that trade, right? So we know that people have data on us, right? So I think that bad personalization, bad relevance is or when you don't receive a personalized experience and they've got the data, that really stands out. We had a deal. I gave you my data. I'm not expecting this shit service, right? And I'm also seeing, I know I haven't got onto my perspective yet, and a third party, you're merely getting my perspective. So I will get to something in a minute, Jeff. But I see this awareness in my daughters, which I find absolutely fascinating, is my youngest. She is really aware of the algorithms and will train. She'll create an account and then train the algorithm on the content she wants to see on that account. So, and she doesn't like me telling people this, but she likes K-pop, and so she has a K-pop account. And that,
oh my god!
And she just
so sorry to hear that.
She trains, she trains one of her social media accounts to just give her that content because and that's what I love, that awareness, right? So I think that we all, and particularly, we all understand that data is being collected on us, and we expect something in return. So I was on a mission to discover how consumers feel about this. And I found this report called Connected Consumer 2024 by Drapers, who I discovered have been the leading authority on fashion retailing in the UK since 1887, my friend. 1887.
Oh wow.
It's behind the registration paywall. Sorry, Ray, what was that?
So that's 18, not 1987.
1887,
this is before the internet. And oh my God.
Yes. In fact, 1887 is before some of the music we play. But it's behind a registration wall. I will include a link to it in the show notes. But it had a whole section dedicated to personal data and AI. And I thought I'd share a couple of gems that I picked out from that. The first one, which I found amazing, because I have been doing this personalization thing for 25 years. I mean, I was with Vignette in 2000, I think, and we were in the CMS industry was all agog with personalization. And so this Marks and Spencer chairman, Archie Norman, he was talking about the retailer's objective for growth in online clothing. And he was talking about, he said, data will be the driving force behind this. This channel shift will be supported by our emerging competitive advantage on data. We'll be able to talk to each customer. Listen to this, Jeff. As an individual moving away from one message fits all marketing. It's one-to-one marketing from 1 billion years ago, right? And that quote is from last year. And so I think that's fascinating that we are still driving towards this, right? Now, I said I'd take the consumer's perspective on this. And what I found interesting was in the report, it talks about one of the biggest drivers for sharing information is convenience. 34% of these folks, it was like 2,000 consumers they surveyed, say they'd share information in order to enable fast one-click checkout, which is just one use case they used, obviously. And also, I thought I'll augment this. So I had a look at a Deloitte study, which I'll also include in the show notes. And it said half of respondents feel that the benefits they get from online services outweigh their data privacy concerns. So almost half of consumers are happy to share data to improve the service. But it draws me to I am nearly finished. The third observation I got, it's a big report, but so I'm just picking out a couple of things. The third one is about trust, and that's the first concern obviously people have, and it's a critical part of retailing 2024, the way they describe it. But when asked whether people are willing to share personal information, 47% chose trusting the brand or the retailer. So the reason why I mention that is because you and I talk about brand a lot, and it's a subject that gets kind of, it's kind of been, what's the right word? It's not, we're not supposed to talk about brand and brand marketing anymore, right? In favor of digital. If you don't have a strong brand, people aren't going to give you their data. So therefore therefore your digital marketing is going to fail. I think that I thought it was really, really interesting that this whole trust thing is about the trust in the brand. So we need to do brand marketing for our digital marketing to work. Anyway, that was my number one. How'd I do? Are we an hour and a half in already? No, that was
yes. I think we're doing time travel because you went back to 1887. So I think we can.
So what do you think of that before we move on to the other one?
Well, I think that one thing is that you want to avoid one size fits all marketing, because that's in an era where we're just getting constantly bombarded with information. It's every time we go online, every time we go to a store. These days you go to a gas station and they're like, there's a video screen with an advertisement on the gas pump, and I'm like, oh my god, And so being hit with all these messages and having them not be relevant it just makes everything noise. And so then it becomes even harder to be heard above the noise. And so I think that's the main reason that we want to be able to tailor messages. And I totally agree, with your statement about, you don't want to be watching certain things that are not totally relevant. And I don't see anything about K-pop when I go on YouTube, because they figured me out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think sometimes it's a bit crude. You know what I mean? You watch 4 videos on something. It's like I was buying a keyboard now, and YouTube still insists I want to see.
Oh, yeah, I know.
It still insists. Anyway.
That gets us.
Yeah, I want to get to you on it. Yeah, so you found a bit of a challenge with that, a data-deprived future. So what you got? What's your number 2?
Yeah, well, actually, I think one of the things that sort of inspired us to go down this rabbit hole, because it was kind of before our last discussion, was a post from a former colleague of mine, John Arnold at Forrester, talking about the data-deprived future for marketers. And so he sees one of the problems is data deprecation, and I didn't know that they actually coined this term. It's the restriction of tracking and access to consumer data due to the loss of cookies, strengthening privacy regulations, walled gardens like Facebook and Amazon, and consumer privacy expectations. This goes back to your trust thing, is that, I can give you data, but I'm not going to give you data if I don't trust you, or if I don't trust that it's just, this is between you and me, and you're not going to be sharing it with the rest of the world. And marketers, this is one of the things that John said, is marketers want to target buyers' audiences and personalize their programs. Everyone wants to avoid complaints, lawsuits, and penalties, because as you know, some of these penalties can be pretty high. And so he kind of recommended taking an introspective, what I thought of as an introspective practice, which is, in order to understand what your limitations are and get over this data deprecation challenge, is that understand what are the forces that are preventing you from acquiring and using data. Have a point of view on your buyer's privacy preferences. And so, obviously this is going to be different for every company, every set of buying audiences. And, how can I develop a framework to determine what that right balance of respect and relevance is, and make sure that that's, it's almost becomes a policy known across the company, certainly across marketing and sales. And then how can I model how to assemble, the use of known, somebody comes a customer, they're a known entity, or we're in a deal with them. So they're known, but they're going to be people who are anonymous. They're going to be people in audiences that you can practically call pseudonymous. In other words, you're sort of giving them an identity based on what you know, and make sure that those practices work around, again, marketing, sales, your product teams, et cetera. So anyway, so it was kind of if you want to know more, obviously with Forrester, you got to go to the next level and become a client and get the paper and talk to John or his colleagues. But I think do you have something you want to say before we?
All I was going to say is I was just going to join in what you're saying there, because I'll include a link to this blog post in the show notes. And I actually chatted with John a few weeks ago, because he was interested in something we'd been talking about, frontline marketing in the past. Jolly nice chap, actually. So, yes. So I'd recommend people go over there. But obviously, if you're not a client of Forrester, there's only a limited amount of information you can get.
I'll only talk to you for 3 minutes, and then got to move on. Anyway, no, that's they're very nice people. So, but before we dig in more to, because I got another one that kind of follows up onto that, but into the internal machinations of marketing, you wanted to talk about some of the promises of personalization before we get to that.
Yes, I did. This is going very seamlessly well, Jeff, I think.
We've been doing this for a
while. So number 3, the 5 promises of personalization. So again, I was kind of taking the consumer's perspective, and I was also thinking about the benefits of personalization. And so while you're focusing there on what's happening in the back end, which is incredibly important, and something, even just before we started recording, we were having a conversation with, my client, who's a startup, very small database, but, that stuff is still important about privacy and what email addresses we can use and what we can't do. And we need to be good stewards of the data, but we want to be relevant. And it's difficult when the consumers of our content are becoming increasingly dark, right? But one of the things one of my observations is, I think there's a lot of sort of privacy theatre, and we need to sell the idea of personalisation and encourage people to share the data with us in this quid pro quo deal that I was talking about earlier on, right? So I think that what we're doing a bad job of at the moment, and I think I was going to say this later maybe, is like the sort of like the cookie pop up and all that kind of stuff. It's all doom and gloom. We're not selling to consumers why or to our B2B buyers why having a personalized experience would be good, right? So that leads me to this Boston Consulting Group thing, and they've got a model, and this model honestly could be 20 years old as well. It's a new piece of content, but it's the 5 promise. They talk about 5 promises of personalization, and honestly, you and me, Jeff, could have come up with them in 2000. But I still think they're relevant. I still think they're relevant. So the first one they've got is empower me. What can customer data be used for to make the experience better, faster, and easier? And as we've heard, that's what consumers want, right? So if you can make things faster. And then know me. How do you provide value in return for users sharing their personal data? So make it very clear that knowing them is important and good. Reach me, reaching out to the right consumer in the right channel at just the right moment. Again, something we've talked about forever in content management. The fourth one is show me. What personalized content is most critical for delivering a great experience. So what do you need to show them to deliver this great experience? And then delight me, the promise that makes personalization feel magical. I must admit that fifth one I wasn't so sure about, because delight sounds like a bit of a shock. And I think personalization works best unseen, doesn't it? I think it's when it's a shock is when people say they notice personalization and they get a bit, this is uncomfortable, right? Exactly. So I'm not sure that I agree with all five, but I am going to include links to this because there's quite a lot of, unlike Forrester, free content available, and you can drill into all those. But I think it's a nice set of five about why you're going to do personalization. And I think that shock leads us to your next perspective, right? So we don't want to be shocking people. So do you want to carry on talking about privacy by design?
I'll just say I agree with your delight the customer is in that, because I've heard that term for, I don't know, probably the past decade, and it's like, to an extent, I mean, really what you want to do is you want to make it seamless so that it's kind of like it becomes part of the everyday interaction with a potential vendor, not like, oh my God, look what happened to me. I just got just got that lovely message from the chatbot that saw that I was, hovering over some site. But anyway, the next one, I think this is where we talked about this a little bit before, is some of these perspectives go from kind of the high level down into the details. And this one by a guy named Ken Theriot at the Riot Agency, which actually took me a while to realize that the Riot is like Theriot spelled out. But he wrote an article in Forbes about privacy by design. So his thesis is, the problem is privacy has gone global. There's GDPR, which has been in the EU. There's privacy laws in states like California, New York, et cetera. Customers are demanding, that their data be kept private. And again, because as consumers of information, we've been signing up for newsletters and downloading whatever papers and whatnot for, so long now that it's like, you think everybody knows us. And so he has some very, specific recommendations in this concept of privacy by design approach. And it's where he's trying to consider the data protection and the privacy issues, together with the fact that you're trying to provide that personalized experience. And the article has a number of processes that he goes through. I'll just pick out a few of them. One, which was data minimalization. And I think, we've discussed this in many things that we've been trying to do, is like, you only collect the data that's necessary to fulfill that specific request. I only need an email for a content subscription, or an email or a newsletter subscription. I only need, if you put some big form up, somebody's just going to go, oh my God, you're just trying to fill up your CRM system with my data, and I'm not interested. A topic or a term I mentioned before, which I'm not sure I'll be able to articulate well, pseudonymization. In other words, replace the name or email address with a pseudonym, making it difficult to trace back to an individual. And this could be, if you're worried about information that maybe marketing's captured that gets out through the rest of the organization and could be misused for under the privacy laws, then you can pseudonymize it. Definitely, any you got to have your best IT security software working on the personal data. So you don't want to be the next cyber crime story where, oh my God, so-and-so leaked all this information to, to some cyber criminal. As you mentioned, you got to provide value for the customers that who are giving you the data, and so he goes into some examples of like, get people involved in surveys, obviously quality content, et cetera, so that they feel like they're getting something for releasing their information. And the other thing, which I think is really important, is planned obsolescence. I mean, I've often talked for years about the fact that you get contact data in, and it's only good. I think the rule of thumb was like 33% of your contact data goes obsolete every year. So, you got to think about, how long am I retaining data? When I think about the fact that people move jobs, they move roles, they move from one buying team to another buying team, they are on different initiatives. And so don't expect that, I've got, hundreds of thousands of names in my database or whatever, and I'm going to, be working my magic on trying to market to all these folks. I mean, you think about, if they're in a buying process, what is the length of that process, and how long is some of that information they gave you relevant to anything further down the road? And so you want to be able to basically dispense with, make sure you're obsoleting data and getting it out of the system so you're not mucking it up for the future.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And I like that data minimalization as well. I've always been a big fan of that. And I think that starts sometimes with when you're building your personas and stuff, is what do you actually need to know? And what's actually relevant for you to drive a campaign, even if we're talking about personalization. We're not talking about some magical web experience. We're talking about typically sending them the right content through email or something like that, isn't it? Or over a social channel. The other day, if you sign up to Rockstar CMO, our newsletter, The Beat, just to use an example, and I'm not meaning to promote it, just to use that, you only put your email address in, right? And I was talking to somebody the other day and said, you don't have everybody's first name, so you don't personalize the emails. I said, no, I don't need to. I don't feel, why would I add that extra friction to register? Just give me your email address. And it's exactly what you just said, right? Is you don't need any more detail for a content subscription. If somebody reaches out to us and wants to have a chat with us, then and maybe wants to learn a little bit more about what we do and what we talk about, they'll soon give me their name. I'm sure they will.
And plus the email address, as you get into your CRM or your market automation systems, the email address becomes one of the key identifiers, so that you can, if you get into a conversation on a salesperson gets in a conversation later on, now you've got something you can match.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we clipped through those, didn't we? Which is probably why we normally do 5 effing things, because we've done 4 effing things in 4/5 of the time, probably. So what do you conclude from those 4 random things that we pulled together there about relevancy and stuff?
So both privacy and personalization are very important, and I think they're very important to provide that seamless experience that is helping the customer on their journey to buying products. And so as a marketer, we need to be thinking about that in everything we do about our campaigning and our tactics, and certainly how we manage our databases of personal information. I know as someone who's done a lot of research, and so I've gone to a lot of company websites always asking for information, and it's kind of like, oh my God, you just then your email box and whatever else just gets jammed with stuff, and it's like, and it becomes very hard to unsubscribe. So it's very important to do this right.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be hard to unsubscribe, but on that point, I think when you ask for things on a form, those things can't all just be useful to you. You need to make it clear why it's important to know this. So, for example, you may need to know what country they're from, because you might need to know what their privacy laws are in that country, or need to know who to route it to, or whatever. But if you can make that a bit clearer than just, why have I got to fill in 10 fucking fields just to, And also, I think I like progressive profiling. Is it progressive profiling?
Yeah.
Where if you're signing up to a newsletter, you just need your email. If you're signing up to something else, you need to give a little bit more detail. If it's a contact us from, a little bit more. And that's what I'd go along with there. I think that's important. And was that your conclusion done?
That's my conclusion. Yes.
So I think for me, it's about the deal. And I think, you have my data. What do I get in return? And I think we need to sell on that. And as I was saying earlier on about the cookie banner, I think is a great example. It's just privacy theatre. Very few companies that you go on. And I know we just click through them and we just ignore them, but every now and again you see a cookie banner and you think, actually, finally somebody fucking gets it, right? That is their first experience of your website, is clicking through that cookie banner. And you might as well use it to explain why that you're doing the cookies, or say something funny, or do something on brand. Don't just have the blah-de-blah words just because you have to. But anyway, that's it. So we get to our last point, our last agenda item, which is a song, which it's your turn, I think, because I chose last time.
It's
so
my
what
turn.
is it that you're going for, Jeff?
Well, we often pick a top song from somebody that everybody knows out there. And this time I picked up, the song was great, but it's by an influencer called Evan Greer. And from, I believe, the New York area, 2021. So a couple years ago, they had a song called Surveillance Capitalism, which is also the theme of a really good book on the topic. And she says, once consent was manufactured, now it's harvested for clicks. So she's, I think she's thinking of it from the perspective of, buyer beware about giving up your data. But again, hey, if you get the right, if you know what the deal is and you're going to get something good for it, then you're willing to give it up.
Yeah. I love it, Jeff. You've closed on a fairly cynical perspective of this with a what's the parody song talking about?
Yes.
Is it parody? Yes, talking about.
I guess I'd say it's a parody song.
All right, so I'm going to close out with a bit of Ethan Greer, Surveillance Capitalism. Yes, I will see you next week. Then, Jeff. Cheers.
Once consent was manufactured, now it's harvested for clicks. Algorithms make decisions. Filter bubbles make us sick. We're all connected to machines. Paid every second.
Thank you, Jeff. And that was a little bit of Ethan Greer and Surveillance Capitalism, which I will include a link to in the show notes. I discovered that the artist is apparently mad at Spotify. So if you're listening on Spotify, I'm glad the algorithm let this episode through. So that's a wrap on episode 244 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. Thank you for dropping a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track, and jiving along with us. I've been your host, Ian Truscott. Thanks as ever to Jeff Clark. And if you liked what Jeff shared, or maybe you missed your weekly dose of Robert, why not let them know? You can find them both on LinkedIn, and I include links to me, Jeff, and all the articles we discussed, and that weird song in the show notes, along with our blog, newsletter, and all of our previous episodes. And they're on rockstarcmo.com. Next week, Kathy is back as I play musical chairs with my guests, and Robert Rose will be back in our Rockstar CMO virtual bar. In the meantime, have a great week, and I hope you'll join me again next week on Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Hennika Watkins-Porter hosts The Entrepreneurial You, empowering entrepreneurs with insights on leadership, business, and success. Hennika, tell listeners what to expect from your show.
So we provide innovative business strategies and practical solutions to common entrepreneurial challenges.
And where can people subscribe?
Find us at hennikawatkinsporter.com, as well as the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcasts.net, or search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.